Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today, oh boy, do we have yet another big one for you. So, Leo ended up coming out with a post here on the official COD Discord that details out the server migration explanation for 27 through 90 and giving us a little bit more clarity that it seems. I haven't actually read through everything yet, so hopefully this will be a nice first dry run. I'm going to be giving you just my honest feedback, and I always want to point out too as well that when you watch my content, it's never really about like, oh, this is awful or this is bad. I like to view things more as, hey, these are opportunities or these are hurdles that we have to overcome. It's never ever putting a slight towards the developers or the staff or really anyone else for that matter. They're trying to figure things out just as much as the community is for kind of what the wants and the needs are. And so when I talk about these things, especially topics that I have the utmost passion for when it comes to kingdom management, kind of game-wide management, alliance management, those types of things that really revolve around keeping kingdoms as active and as healthy as possible, players as engaged and as happy as possible, and enjoying to play, log in every day, interact with your community, your fellow players, your fellow kingdom mates, if you will. For me, this is a lot of what I enjoy doing. There's a lot of studying and research that I've put in across multiple kingdom builders where I have hundreds of accounts across Rock. I have 170, 160 accounts in Infinity Kingdom. I have 227 accounts now in Call of Dragons. So one of the things I really enjoy doing is educating myself. I like looking at what other kingdoms do. I like looking at common denominators, what are consistent trends that are happening. I like analyzing player psychology and seeing why it is that they do certain things they do. So again, without me rambling too much, let's go ahead and continue now with reading through the server migration details. So, excuse me, starts off. Following a preview of the upcoming server migration, we received, I'll just put this here so you can kind of like see my face. Server migration, we received valuable feedback and relevant inquiries from our lords below. We would like to provide an explanation on the migration function and provide more details on its further optimization. Question 1. Why can a server be designated as full? Answer. Servers are categorized into 4 statuses. We know this: normal, active, crowded, and full. The decision to designate a server as full is aimed at maintaining competitive balance across all servers. Okay, so I mean, this is for the most part pretty politically like conservative and safe. Or standard, we should say. This measure also serves to prevent certain servers from gaining excessive power and to avoid an undue concentration of lords on a single server, i.e., we get it, 31, 32, etc., right? If I'm going, I don't even know if I even have my, let me see, where am I going here? Let me pull up my thing, which is my top server list. That actually probably would have been pretty dope sauce to do. I think I have, here we go, here's my master top stats. So if we're looking at, for example, the top kingdoms right now based on servers, this is what we did when we pulled the data about, 2.5 weeks ago. It would be a little bit hard, but like the ones that are really in that category is like your 32, your 34s, your 31, your 33s. Then you have like your Kingdom 2s. I think, I want to say like 6 might be in there too as well. Then you have like 35, 36, 37, 38. Like those are some of the more top kingdoms in the game. Now, bear in mind, it is difficult to accurately tell which kingdoms, individual kingdoms, are ranked where they are because, and I should say this once they get into a merged kingdom, because there are no individual kingdom leaderboards. So, and I'll give you, and if you look at a game such as Infinity Kingdom, one of the great things they did in this game that I absolutely loved is when they went into KVK, you had two different leaderboards. You had the KVK leaderboards, which showed you all the group kingdoms that were there, and then you still had your home kingdom or / individual kingdom leaderboards. So you could still look at those. That is something I hope and wish that they add into Call of Dragons, because then it would allow for us to more accurately, if you will, show you kind of who are still the top kingdoms, which ones are maybe gaining some power, losing some power, right? That would allow for me to give you guys more updates on our Top Stats series too as well. But also, there's a lot more benefits to showing off individual kingdom leaderboards. One of those being is that it allows for the alliances and the kingdoms themselves to appropriately pull the data from, okay, well, which alliances are still in our kingdom? Because remember, if an alliance renames itself, it may be difficult for you to keep up with, oh, is this alliance actually a part of my kingdom? Are they maybe not a part of my kingdom? Maybe there's different leaders. Maybe the leaders change their names. It's very hard to do that unless like the only way you can really do it right now, if you're trying to capture and group up everyone, is you'd have to have everyone join some type of social media area, i.e. a Discord, right? You try and get everyone from the kingdom onto a Discord, then you can keep up with people from your home kingdom more appropriately. But otherwise, it just becomes increasingly difficult to keep tabs on who is actually still in your kingdom, who's not in your kingdom, which alliances are still there, who's leading those alliances, and it also doesn't allow for you to appropriately gauge player growth off of things like leaderboards, for example, if you're looking at the top 200. This is just to name some things on why it's incredibly beneficial to have individual or home kingdom leaderboards. Okay, then we get to, sorry, that was a little bit long tangent, but hopefully you guys are here for those. And girls too as well, we're gender neutral. And then we get to avoid an undue concentration of lords, which has the potential to disrupt the balance of matching up upcoming seasons. So this is the thing, we kind of need to know what is the criteria. Maybe they'll answer that later when it comes to full, because really when you're talking about kind of server population, categorizing it full could mean, okay, well, it's full. Maybe that means what, you're going to allow 300 people to get in and then it's full? Or is it already full? Is it already full if you're at 5,000 active players? And then if so, how are you defining that activity? Is that activity defined by 5,000 people that log in at least one time every 24 hours? Is that one time every 72 hours? Or is it logging in 3 times a day for those 5,000 people? How are you actually defining that? Question 2, what criteria determines when a server is designated as full? So here we go. Determining a server as full primarily depends on the number of active lords within the server and overall strength of the server. The server's overall strength is derived from the individual strength of all lords within the server. The individual strength takes into account various aspects such as heroes, artifacts, legions, city deployment, and research progress. Furthermore, it considers the Lord's level of engagement during the current season. Lords with stronger overall capabilities receive higher scores in their individual strength assessment. Okay. This is a bit broad. And now I understand it's not as though they're saying, okay, well, these are the leaderboard. Like, for example, it would have been nice if they came out and said, these are the leaderboards that we use. These are some of the other things that we use. Like we look at contribution from individual alliances, and then we kind of sum total that up across the alliances. That would have been nice. We look at the top 200 lords, maybe excluding the top 10, or if they're over a certain power level. Like just a little bit more specifics would be nice to know. Because really what this is saying, if we break it down at face value, is you're saying number of active lords. Okay, well, what defines an active lord? Again, like we just stated, is that defined by players that log in every day, at least once a day? Is it once a day every 2 days? Is it once a day a week? We don't know what that means. That level of information, in my opinion, should be provided. Now, that's not giving away, in what I believe, any type of top secret thing. Another example, Infinity Kingdom, I'll go back to it. They did something where they showed you what the activity level was of players in your alliance. They also showed you when players were last logged in. So they gave you a last logged in date that went from 1 minute to 60 minutes, and then from 1 hour to 24 hours, and then from 1 day up to, continuous days. Like each day, each 24-hour period counted as a day. But then it also told you that it also designated active statuses. So an example would be you were considered hyper if you logged in at least 3 times within a 24-hour period. You were considered active if you logged in at least 1 time in a 24-hour period. You were considered, I think, normal if you logged in at least 1 time every 2 days or 1 time every 3 days, something like that. Now, that would be great to include in Call of Dragons, right? Not only for just good alliance management, but to be able to also appropriately designate certain roles too as well, or we should say ranks within alliances. This is one of the reasons why it was added in the first place, and I can tell you, it was amazing. You then didn't have to go through as much of this type of spreadsheet tracking of going in and saying, okay, like jotting down player A, power level, tech donation amount, and then you did that for all the players in the alliance, then you did it again the next year. You did it every 2 days, and you tried to kind of graph. Now, you might still do things like that to appropriately gauge overall development and progression per player, but having that type of in-game assist feature was great. So for me, we need to define what is an active lord, right? Now, maybe they mentioned that in one of the later questions, but that's something that we need to define. Within the server and the overall strength of the server, right? They say the strength, again, like we said, is derived from the individual strength of all lords within the server, and it takes into account these things. So basically, you could just say it takes into account the number of active players and the current power level of each player. Now, you could also ask, is that current power or is that peak power? I'd like to assume or believe that it's current power and not off of your historical peak power that you would find in your player profile. So, okay, so that's what you're defining is based on number of active lords and the power of those lords. I am a little iffy. Let me answer this. I'm a little iffy here on this because if you're designating the server as full, which is specifically factored into population cap or limit, you're saying that you're going to allow a certain number of players to come in. However, because there is no power cap on players that can join a kingdom, I don't want to say it's a moot point, but it's not really doing the migration system service. It's doing it more of a disservice, right? Because sure, you're coming out and providing some details on what is considered what, and that is great. Absolutely love that. I think transparency is very important, maybe up to a certain point. However, you could arguably have, like, let's say a server is designated as full, no one else can join, but it's, it's active for whatever reason, right? And you can have 200 people join. There's nothing stopping you from having the strongest top 200 players from your KVK group go to that kingdom. And then you're still going to end up having, right, or potentially getting to a point where you're developing super servers or just having very strong servers, right, if they're already going to an existing strong server. I should make that point. If they're not and they're going to a lower ranked server, maybe to repopulate or to reinvigorate it, right, that's different. Okay, let's continue. Question 3. Why are some servers designated as full shortly after opening? Answer. A server's migration status is dynamically adjusted based on the current server's overall strength. The reason some servers are designated as full shortly after opening for migration is that the destination server's overall strength has already reached the maximum threshold for migration eligibility. So what it seems to me is that they kind of have this backdoor Imperium status, if I'm just taking something as an example from Rock, right, or this type of, we could say, super server status, that they already know which kingdoms are above a specific threshold, which you can argue that's their kind of behind backdoor Imperium or super server. So they've hit this cap. Let's say, as an example, the cap, like if we look at some of these kingdoms, let me show you something real quick here. So if we go over and we look at, and this is just to show an example. This is the last top stat data collection I did on the 13th of August, right? So a little more than 2 weeks ago. Let's say, as an example, that the cap is 17 billion. Right, so your server strength, or sorry, these are merged kingdoms. Let's go back here. Okay, so let's go here to the 10th when we did this. For 2 months, and let's say that your individual kingdom cap, let's say it's 10 billion. Let's say 10 billion is the cap. So if you're already at 10 billion or more, and again, we have to figure that because the game is similar developer, there's relations there to Rock. Let's say that they already have some of these systems in place where it's gauging the top 200, top 300, or top 500, or top 1,000 players. I have to assume that they're doing some type of sum total there that we just don't know about. So arguably, the only way for us to probably get an accurate picture on this is we'd have to go in-game, and we'd have to be able to, for example, add the top 200 personal power players from each home kingdom. However, remember, this is the important part. Because there's no individual leaderboards, we have no way of doing that after kingdoms get into or go to the next season after their season 1. Meaning the only way you could really get that, even though it would be outdated before the migration function comes available, which it comes available at the end of future seasons from season 1 plus or 2 and beyond, it would be outdated, right? Because you'd only be able to pull the top 200 players from your home kingdom off of your home leaderboards at the end of your first season. So this is why a lot of this is kind of shrouded in mystery. It would be nice to know this information, at least be able to populate some data from having individual kingdom leaderboards, still being able to show, and then some other things. Okay, so they explained to us kind of what it is. However, I mean, you are telling us, but you're not really telling us, right? I still would like a little bit more information here. I think a little more transparency would be lovely for the community. Now let's get to question 4. As an alliance leader, I want to migrate with my alliance members, but I'm unsure about the number of people who can participate in migration. I'm worried that if we start the migration process and it's halfway done, the remaining members might not have the opportunity to migrate anymore. Is there a solution to address this? And I might give a little bit longer of an answer here, because this is such an important question and such an important belief for me when it comes. So answer: alliance leaders can start by observing the status of the destination server before deciding on the scale of migration. Servers designated as crowded have a limited capacity for incoming migrators, while servers designated as active allow up to 200. So now we're actually getting some numbers. This is great. Stop teasing me with the good stuff. Allow up to 200 incoming migrators. Servers designated as normal allow up to 350 incoming migrators. We recommend that alliance leaders considering a group migration select servers categorized as either normal or active to ensure the completion of their migration process. So the short version here that they're really telling you, and I say this with love and respect, is that no, there is not a guarantee or true solution to migrating your entire alliance. Now, I'm going to probably make another video on this, but I will say this briefly here. Call of Dragons is at this crossroads moment where they really need to make a decision on what side of the fence are they going to land on, right? Because, and this really gets into like kingdom macro and just like widespread, like you have to understand kind of how a kingdom builder operates from top down. And you also have to understand player psychology and why players want to move in groups. Why do they want to migrate together? Why is moving as an alliance important? Why is keeping the alliance intact is important, so you don't lose player drop off if you don't have the full alliance that goes over, which will overall affect the game's bottom line if you have multiple alliances that want to try and move or migrate, but they're unable to get all of their players over. Players may quit. Players may stop spending money if they can't move with their groups. Kingdom builders, sure, you have alliances, and those alliances are their own kind of sub or independent communities, if you will, smaller communities compared to the overall kingdom at large. And these communities want to play together for the most part, right? It's very rare that you find a full alliance that wants to move and they don't care if half the alliance makes it over to a new kingdom and the other half doesn't. If a whole alliance wants to move, that's everyone, or at least up to everyone that wants to move within that alliance for all the members that have checked off, right? So this is something that is important. However, the answer that they gave here is very towing the line. Like, this is very kind of undetermined, undecided. My view is very simple. They have come out and they've stated that Call of Dragons is a little bit more of an alliance-focused game. However, they're still catering towards kind of kingdom builder, kingdom management style aspects. I'll give you an example. They have a migration feature that they've implemented. You can migrate specifically to a home kingdom, yet you do not have any way of accurately knowing who actually made it over to your home kingdom, right? Because, one, there's no way to look at incoming and outgoing migrators, which would be great if they added that in for home kingdoms. But there's also no way to look at it based on the leaderboards. Like, for example, if you were playing in Rock and someone migrated into the kingdom that you didn't know, and they ended up being on the top 300 or top 500 or top 1,000, I think it goes to 1,000 now, right? And let's say they were someone who was pretty strong and they were at the top 100, you would most likely notice that within a 24-hour period after migration starts. Why? Because you probably have a lot of people that are taking a look at the leaderboards. Now, yes, this is kind of an old-fashioned or manual labor way of doing it, because even in Rock, there's no way to know who's incoming and outgoing into a kingdom, which, again, would be great. Take my ideas. Please, you're more than welcome. It's going to make the game so much better. Point being is that they're really kind of at this middle point, like I'm saying, of the kind of needing to decide on, okay, are we going to really go full-blown into creating an atmosphere and an environment where kingdoms can be as healthy as possible? Because if the kingdoms are healthier, that means more players are actively playing on average. It means more players are engaged and more players are more likely to spend money. Or are we not going to do any type of kingdom management things and allow for kingdoms to be a little bit more autonomous, and we're going to keep down the path of our more alliance-focused system, and we're going to allow because you can also make the argument that the way that migration is now is that it's very volatile, where players, you could have rogue alliances, you could have an alliance that, and there was a couple of these in Infinity Kingdom where there was literally like a core group of rogue whales that were just every 30 days moving to a new kingdom, farming that kingdom, and then moving again. You could have something like that because it's easier to do something like that in Call of Dragons than it is in potentially some of the other games where you just have, hey, here's a free amount of people that can move over. You also have the chance, and we'll see if they end up just talking about this, where you could have players that are incredibly low level, like brand new accounts, or sorry, not brand new accounts, but accounts that are at least at like level 16 for the bare minimum to migrate, and they just make a bunch of those accounts on different emails, and then they move all of those over to flood the migration cap limit, right? So you could have multiple people do that, and all of a sudden now your 200 or your 350 incoming migrators is cut in half, right? If people really want to do something like that. And again, we'll see if they address that, but that just kind of goes to my point, is they really kind of have to decide, are we just going to go wild, wild west, and we just want alliances to move or players to move wherever they want because we just want constant drama. We want that possibility of constant drama, constant war, because you're not allowing for organized groups to kind of move, even though no matter what you do, you're always going to have that in kingdom builders. And for the most part, kingdoms are going to want to unite. Most kingdoms that understand the benefit of season 1 developing know that it's pointless to just fight and do war all day, every day, especially if you want your low spend and your free to play, which typically is always going to be your majority population base for a kingdom, to be able to contribute in future seasons where you're going to be in more warlike environments. It just is a disservice. You don't do something like that. And this is something that rock kingdoms have eventually figured out over a period of time. One of the reasons why you ended up seeing things like jumper projects, right? Organized groups that are forming before they go into kingdoms. Why? Part of it is because they started learning that, well, if we want a higher chance at not getting run over or rogue players to kind of just do whatever they want, we need to go in with an organized body and a strong body in order to establish some form of majority presence, control, governance, if you will. So there was a higher chance that kingdoms would sustain, right? This is kind of the high level overview for it. Now, maybe some groups may not view it, may not view it like that, and they might just think, oh, well, I'm just going in with a group. But they're going in with a group at minimum, so they have a higher chance of sustaining for a longer period of time. Like, these are the types of historical things in kingdom builders, understanding player psychology, trends, why people do what they do, that is so much bigger than just the game itself. My passion bubble just exploded. Okay, let's continue. Everyone's going to be like, yo, boss, this TED Talk was just so OP. All right, normal. Next question here. Can Lords, first off, I love that they did this. I would also love to know what the number is for crowded, right? They did say 200 incoming for normal, 350 for, 350 for normal, 200 for active, but what is it for crowded, right? That would be nice. Maybe it's 100. Right, maybe we could say that. Maybe crowded is 100 or 75, something like that, I would estimate. Next question. Can lords from other servers who create malicious sub-accounts, so here we go, to occupy migration slots affect the migration process? Answer. When assessing a server's overall strength, we exclude low-power characters as well as high-power characters who remain consistently inactive. As a result, the creation of sub-accounts will have minimal impact on the available migration slots. However, so that is nice to know, right? However, this is, so there's two parts here that are a little bit confusing to me. One, if you already have the ability to assess inactive accounts, and more than that, consistently inactive accounts, why are you limiting it to just low power and high power? Shouldn't you be consistent across the board and do all accounts from low level through high level or high powered accounts, and then you should remove those people that have been inactive? And again, if you're going off of rock, it would be 30 days, right? If that's still the case over there, where if you have someone who hasn't logged in 30 days, they're removed from your top 300 power contention that's factored into your KVK MMR, your matchmaking rating, right, or your overall kingdom strength that is then used to be match made with other kingdoms of similar or as close to top 300 strength. So I'm somewhat surmising that there has to be some similarities here, right? It can't be that far off because they haven't indicated otherwise, right? And because the games are similar in, I would imagine, their development states, or at least for some of these factors, right? That is probably the case, or at least close to, we could say. And then my second one here is, and my second point is that I would love to know, how do they define a consistently inactive account? Is it if the account hasn't been logged in 30 days? Is it if the account hasn't been logged in 2 weeks? Again, some transparency, a little bit more information would be great to know. And then point 3 here is they say, as a result, the creation of sub-accounts will have minimal impact on available migration slots. First off, okay, if the data reflects that, you'd have to go through a number of migration seasons to really pull the amount of data you would need to make that argument. Maybe there's some data now in a small pool form or amount, because you have had a couple migration seasons thus far, that might give some early indicators for that, which would be great to know, However, if you have players who are truly dedicated, they will surpass your expectations. There are players out there who are driven. They will make 20, 50 emails and have 4 accounts in each of the merged kingdoms, which could arguably be 200 accounts. They level them all up to 16 with, macros, or maybe they do it individually, whatever it may be, the manual labor way, and then they're ready to just put some herding on that kingdom that's trying to go, right? And bear in mind, I'm just giving a very extreme example of one person doing that, right? What if a couple people did that, right? It'd be less effort, less work. The challenge is that it can happen. They say minimal impact, but what they do not say is that this will never happen, right? That's really what we want to hear. And the answer I'll give you there is that there's only one way to do that. The only way you can actually stop any potential unforced errors is if you add some type of an accept or a deny system. I shouldn't say you need. I just want to say that's the only way you can really stop that. You would arguably have to have someone or a group of people that are approving and denying people coming into kingdoms in order to avoid that. And then you'd have to have player resumes, some details. We mentioned this in a previous video, where you would do something such as have a resume for if a player is applying to your kingdom. You would say, where did the player come from? What was their current power level when they applied? If they've played in other kingdoms, it would also tell you the power level of that player when they left the kingdom, the previous kingdom they played in. It would tell you like their T1 through T5 stats on kills and deaths breakdowns, and it would show you that from either the moment they applied or if it's able to update in real time. And then maybe a little optional field where they could write in, right? What's their current power level, their castle level, things like that. That, to me, is what I really believe is the future, and really the direction that I would love to see the game going in, where kingdoms have a little bit more autonomy. But without diving too far into that, if you want to stop miscellaneous, if you want to stop, misused or ill-intended small accounts to take up spots, if you want to stop rogue whales from coming in, or any players that have ill intent that want to come into your kingdom to cause chaos, right? And this is just to name a few things that have and will continue to happen in kingdoms, across kingdom builders. The only way to stop that is you have to have some type of filtering system, right? And the best way to do that is you have an accept and a deny system. Whether you have one person making that call, you have the top 3, top 5 alliances, and you kind of do like a 3/5 majority vote, gets whatever it may be, right? I personally just like having it very easy, where you just have some type of king-queen system that we've mentioned, and then you can rotate that. Other people can swap out for the top. I mean, again, you can do it however you want. It doesn't mean one person has to sit there forever. And again, I'm just giving very simple kind of overviews here, right? Not going too much into detail. There's a lot more I could expand on here. Let's move on. Next question. It's difficult to discern the status of a server. We don't have advanced knowledge of which servers are designated as full. Is there a solution to this? And basically just meaning, hey, can we figure out what the designation of the server is beforehand, and then how many spots will be available for that kingdom as well? Answer. The current display of server statuses still has room for further optimization. In the future, we will address this by displaying the server statuses in the same division throughout the entire season. So This is something that I actually think is a phenomenal question and great answer, right? Have to give credit here because this to me is an answer that says we're going to be transparent. We're going to tell you that information, right? It isn't ready now, but it will be ready in the future. And maybe server statuses could update in real time. So maybe if players end up going inactive or more inactive throughout a season, maybe your server will go from crowded to active or active to normal, as an example, right? So that would be cool if that happened as well. But anyways, I love this. This is great. Can't wait to see this happen. And then we get to, in this update, we have refined the criteria for assessing the overall strength of servers. With the optimization, we aim for the opportunity of both flexibility and consolidation through migration. The migration feature will be reactivated within 1 working day on behalf of Call of Dragons. We thank you for the support and feedback. I want to point out, there's a lot of thumbs down here. Thumbs down reactions here. First off, you guys are cold-blooded. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of these faces. Oh, I don't know what this face is supposed to mean. The face doesn't look maybe as though it's a good face, but I don't know. You guys will have to let me know that. And then the ice cold. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to see if there's some reactions. I know this is a little bit longer of a video, but again, it is necessary to get a lot of context and for at least me to be able to explain as much as I can because there's just so much in here to really unpack. Okay, now before I kind of get to my final conclusive thoughts, I want to see if there's some questions here from people in the actual chat that mentioned anything around this time when it was posted, right? Which would be 9/23, right, and after. So I'm just going to go through. I'm not going to go too long. I just want to see if there is anyone that maybe mentioned something. 2024. Here's one. Kay mentions, imagine making migration somehow worse now. It's based on power and not just accounts. Congrats on effing it up more. Yeah, it's rough. Let's see if there's any. Let's see if there's any more. Why am I thinking game for whales? All thing you put on the game are for whale. I don't know if that's really specific here. Migration, distinction, determine. Let's see here. Say upset again. So you didn't listen. Here we go. Ups says so you didn't listen to the players. Now they're upset again, and you're at risk for losing them. You heard the feedback. Fix migration, please. So here we go. Phalanx. So with the new migration info, it pretty much just confirmed that moving one alliance will be hard. More than that, it is almost impossible. The max movement is 350 into a server, but that has to be marked normal, and the incoming strength seems like it'll quickly jump to full before everyone can move. I mean, again, good points, right? These are all things that we talked about. Let's see here. Does it retroactively adjust with the amount of people who migrate out as well? I would have to assume so, but that is a good question to ask. So a server can have 10k farmers, but only 100 whales. Seems balanced. I don't know if that's really the case as far as that goes, but it also means that, and this is to me one of the biggest things that I just don't know if they took into consideration initially, which is that because you don't have a power cap, you could have 50, 100 mil plus people all joining the kingdom, and they all count as what? 1. And to me, that just is not fair. I do not believe in that. That doesn't mean I'm like shaming them at all. I just don't believe that you should. So let me clarify here. A migration cap is important. One person should count as 1 slot, right? Let me say that at face value. However, because there is no power cap going into migration, and because they didn't designate that or clarify that, we can only assume that someone who is 110 million compared to someone who's 5 million counts as 1, which means that, again, you could have just the top end of players from 3 or 4 other kingdoms all going into 1, right? And now you're going to have a bunch of potentially, I don't want to say dead kingdoms, but just more inactive kingdoms. That's a topic for another time. R. Collins says, for example, a crowded server loses 200 players. Will it adjust in real time or no? Since they asked again. They said that's what I'd like to know. That's the question. Let's see here. White Bear. L says, wow, for real, so 350 people can move only. Why so less? Should be 10K. This guy wants like the whole world to move. So yeah, I mean, again, this is the thing. I am somewhat okay with them setting pop limits, so to speak. I mean, I think that needs to be thought about a little bit more. Because one, you'd have to know what this is the thing. If you don't know if they're trying to truly average out, this is the thing. They talk about averaging and balancing things out, right? But in the same breath, they don't have a power cap. They don't have an ability to accept deny. So how are you going to balance and average out player bases in kingdoms if you're allowing for any power level at given the amount of players that can move, and you're also limiting the lower powered potential inactive accounts that may not be able to move, but all those people are going to be able to move to kingdoms, like that to me just seems like there's a little bit of a conundrum there, right? Or maybe we just need to think about it a little bit more. So then we have Ashley. I like the power cap decision. It's for the best. To be clear, it's not a power cap. It's a migration population cap specifically. Or you could make the argument it's actually a migration cap on how many players can move to the kingdom that is factored in with a population cap, which is set by its kingdom designation, right? Of active, normal, crowded, and full. Let's see here. I've been waiting suggestion for them to drop. So here we go. So Kilowatt says, so basically no kingdom can ever become strong enough to beat 32, 33 and other insanely overpowered kingdoms. That is not necessarily true. Because the kingdom is full, it could mean that it doesn't allow anyone, at least I believe that's how, someone have to correct me if I'm wrong there, but if the kingdom is full, I don't believe anyone can move there. So if 31 and 32, 33 as an example are set at full, they won't be able to bring in anyone new. But other kingdoms that could be closer to them, maybe it's others in the 30s, or, from some of the information I showed, like I think 34, 35, 38, 36 at some points, right, were pretty strong at the top of the boards in the top 10 when we did the data back in 2 months ago, I should say 2.5 months ago. So you could say that if those kingdoms if they're not at a full status, but maybe they're at a crowded or an active status, they could still bring in people, but they basically would have to recruit the top 1% of players, right? That's a whole other topic, but that's something that we didn't even touch on, is that if you're trying to balance and average out kingdoms, right, the challenge here is that it shouldn't just be about filling the bottom up, right, or funneling, like pyramid funneling the bottom up, because, right, it should also be about looking at balancing it from the top down and the bottom up, right, to where you're trying to kind of meet in the middle. The challenge right now is that the current migration system and the way that kingdoms are trying to, maybe if you view it as getting as strong as 31, 32, is that they have to kind of go up. And in order to go up in funneling, they basically have to recruit the top 1% of players, or the strongest players, to come to their kingdom, so that way eventually they might get paired with those kingdoms. And then you also have to view it from the top end, right? If you don't do anything about it from the top end, you're gonna consistently have unbalanced matchups in KVK where no one's really going to be able to compete with 31 and 32. And because there's no way for, like, let's say if you take the 32 example, right, of BD and DS, and us hearing that one of the big families there, right, there's two big families in 32, so one of the big families in 32 wants to migrate out, or let's just say if they do, right, because I think some people have mentioned that they do want to, but let's just say in this example that one of the families want to move out, and they have a couple alliances worth of players, there's no way for them to do that. Like, it is basically theoretically impossible for them to move everyone in one migration season. They would have to hope that in the next season they get paired up with the same kingdom and then migrate the rest of their players. Like, that's just that's a hard ask, right? I would never want to ask that of the players. And if they can't move and they have to stay in the same home kingdom, that could also be a turnoff. That can factor into player drop-off. And now you're losing more, you're taking more net revenue loss for your game, because why would players want to keep playing? Where's their motivation to not only play but to spend money if they're not able to keep enjoying the game in the way that they want, right? Because the way that the rules are set up are very restricting or limiting, right, in their views. So that just kind of goes into something else. Why people complaining about migration again? Unless they have moves to 32. Lol, the servers are full at a fraction of the power 32 has in Season 1, so yes, it's bad. They are basically unbeatable. Yeah, I mean, again, some of these are there. Anyways, without having this be incredibly long, I am going to go ahead and just give you my final conclusive thoughts here, and then we'll end it out. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think about everything we covered. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you see where I'm coming from? Even if you maybe don't agree, if you enjoyed this impromptu TED Talk, I'd love to know. Would you like more TED Talks? Outside of that, do you have some potential solutions that you think the game could adopt or include as ways to fix this if it's something outside of some type of accept-deny system? Because, as I've mentioned, to me, that is the only foolproof way, regardless of however the kingdom is set up governance-wise, to accept or deny players. That's the only way you can purely filter who's joining your kingdom and who's not joining your kingdom. I also want to point out that I personally do not believe there's anything inherently wrong with adopting or looking at great features when it comes to kingdom management and or alliance management from other games and adopting those, right? You're kind of taking the best of both worlds. And I've said this before and I'll say it once again. Call of Dragons, to me, already is unique enough to stand on its own. What I really believe we need to do, right, with its unique features, its range play, its on-field structures that you can build, the barricades, the keeps, etc., being able to have flying units that are able to go over structures. These are unique identifiers that no other kingdom builder on the market thus far, at the level and quality in which Call of Dragons has it at, is producing. They're just not. So to me, it's let's invest more in the quality of life in Call of Dragons. And then let's make it to a point where the game is just so much more enjoyable than any other kingdom builder. The game is going to continue to sell itself. It's just a no-brainer, right? One of the reasons why I still produce content, I still play the game. I love Call of Dragons, right? I think it's the best overall kingdom builder on the market currently, and maybe even arguably that's ever been produced thus far, because of everything that it has available in it at the moment. Okay, that's going to do it for me. I'm almost 41 minutes now. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Yeah, man, this was a lot. That's going to do it for me as always. Until next time, I will catch you later.